Alright, class, I've given you a handout. This is a very famous short story from an author named Nathaniel Hawthorne called Young Goodman Brown. It's a seminal work in American literature, and a lot of you will eventually have to read it in college, should you go. Hawthorne is a great place to start as we take our dive into the world of literature. Aside from Young Goodman Brown, Nathaniel Hawthorne's written a lot of other short stories like Ethan Brand, The Minister's Black Veil, and he also wrote The Scarlet Letter. If you've read that in class. A lot of his stories carry the common theme of good and evil, faith, things of that nature. I think a lot of this was inspired by his family heritage and so on. Hawthorne lived in the mid-19th century. He was born in 1804, and he passed away 60 years later in 1864. I think one of the biggest things that inspired him, as I said, was his family heritage. He was a descendant of a man named John Hawthorne, who was a judge during the Salem witch trials. I'm sure you've heard of those before, I hope maybe in an American history class. The Salem witch trials happened in the New England area, around Boston specifically, and they were kind of a weird time in American history. There were settlers called the Puritans, and basically they thought a bunch of people in their community were witches, so they would burn, hang, and drown them, and a lot of innocent people died because of this. And John Hawthorne was a judge during this time, and he was famously the only judge that didn't feel any sort of guilt or any sort of repentance or give any sort of apology for any of this. He was dead set that he did the right thing. And I think this had a big impact on his descendant Nathaniel's work. Young Goodman Brown is set around the time of this in the Puritan days, and the Puritans were very concerned with being pious and good and living through faith and doing what they felt was right in God's eyes. And there was this huge concern that evil could be anywhere and everywhere, and they needed to be vigilant about avoiding it at all costs. I mean, they felt that like your neighbor could be a witch, or that the devil could be lurking out in the woods waiting to tempt you. I mean, evil could be anywhere, and they needed to kind of, stick with God, and that would be the way that they would be saved and they could defeat evil and be good, so to speak. Another work that kind of covers this area in greater depth than Young Goodman Brown is a play by Arthur Miller called The Crucible, which we could look at. If you guys enjoy this, we can always, it's a short play, so. But for right now that we have all of this in mind and we have an idea of what the Puritan mindset was, I want you to take the next 30 minutes and I want you to read this story. It's not long. You should be able to get it done in a class period. And when you're reading, I want you to make sure that you're reading closely. As with most literature, there's a lot of detail and a lot to think about in the text. This short story, it has a lot of symbolism, a lot of themes. It's a lot more than just the story of a man walking out into the woods, and well, you'll see what happens next. And once we're done, we'll have a discussion about it. All right, let's get started.